We meet again, my friend. Thank you very much for being here. I'm glad you are. Tonight, we are circling back around to the case of the murder of Judge Kevin Mullins. That it's not a whodunit because we know who done it. That who is his longtime friend, a parent friend, and a co-worker, Sheriff Mickey Stines. But it's a whitey do it kind of case. And if we're going to talk about this case, the best guest to have is Elizabeth from Hillbilly Crime. Welcome back, Elizabeth. Glad you're here.
Hi.
Oh my
Thanks for
goodness, we are here again. This is the
Yay.
case that keeps on giving.
It sure is.
I think maybe the what we should loop our viewers around on is basically in the last little bit there have been a whole bunch of documents that have dropped in the federal lawsuit, even more depositions, some exhibits, some stuff that shows off some pretty bad behavior in the sheriff's office. Uh, yeah, so like, what is some of the stuff that you found in there?
Well, we went through LaShawna Frazier's deposition the other night, or yesterday, I guess. And
Who's
I
Lashana Frazier?
okay, so she is the, I guess, assistant, the admin assistant to the sheriff in the sheriff's department, and she has been there through since the last administration, since Danny Webb was there.
Okay, so when Sheriff Stines was elected sheriff, she was the admin. She's been around for a while. She knows the way things go.
Yeah. So he
So
kept her on.
yeah, and I think in those depositions, like just to, I don't know, I hate to belabor this, but Mickey Steins, this is the video of him shooting Judge Mullins, right? This happened on a Thursday. And the previous Monday, he had been deposed in this lawsuit that Sabrina Adkins and Jennifer Hill brought. Now it's the estate of Jennifer Hill. She's passed away. Brought against Sheriff Stines, Mickey Stines here, and his then deputy, well, his previous deputy, let's say, a guy named Ben Fields, alleging that Sheriff Stines knew or should have known about the SAing that was occurring by his deputy. That's basically the allegation, right? And the lawyers for Mickey Steins are saying that it was that deposition. These are the Bartleys, his lawyers. It was that deposition that kind of set him off, and he was afraid of. He thought that his wife and daughter were in danger. Is that a fair enough characterization?
That's what he said. Each interview that Jeremy Bartley has given, he's kind of dropped a little bit more with each interview.
Yeah.
And so the way that he has, this last interview, the way that he has kind of framed it for us is that he thought that his family had already been taken when he tried to call his daughter on the phone and he couldn't reach her. He thought they were already taken, and so that was interesting.
So the implication is that a like a cartel or a cabal inside the Letcher County uh, elite and powerful. It's really hard to say it that way, but that those with power in Letcher County feared that Mickey had some information that he would spill in his deposition, and in order to hedge their bet, he believed that they had taken his wife and daughter.
Yeah, and another piece of the puzzle too was that he regularly delivered food boxes to people in the community, and normally they would deliver like 40 boxes, and he would go with the preacher that was on the video.
Yes.
That day that they went to deliver food boxes after they all met at lunch down there at that restaurant. And through some of my sources, I've found out that that day they all found it very odd that they had only picked up 2 food boxes instead of 40. And what his lawyer kind of referred to was that whoever was having him deliver those boxes was having him deliver them somewhere different this day. And he felt like he was being lured uh, out into isolation. And he was afraid that they were trying to get him out somewhere by himself to hurt him. That's how I understood what his lawyer said.
Oh my! So Jeremy Bartley has said pretty much that story.
Yeah, well, the last interview that I heard him say, he said that Mickey had went out and one of the witnesses had said that he felt like he was being taken somewhere in isolation, isolated, and
Okay,
he got scared.
so in light of that, of course, we don't know what is true and what is not true. We only know what people are saying is true, right? But in light of that, does that kind of explain the paranoid kind of behavior that Sheriff Stines was exhibiting in the videos with the state police?
Well, I think it does. I think a whole lot of this information that's coming out is kind of changing the way that I've looked at this case personally.
I mean, you and I talked once, if I remember correctly. One of the ideas, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but one of the ideas was like, man, that was weird. I wonder if he somehow got drugged or, you know,
Yeah.
something like that. But if he's in a mental state that where he's paranoid for his life, he is concerned for the lives of his wife and daughter, then maybe that paranoia that the
Had merit.
yeah, yeah. But at the same time, like if I'm going to play devil's advocate, he was lucid enough to understand that he's not going to answer the police's questions while they're in the cruiser. He was lucid enough to not just spill things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I've kind of wondered if it was an act.
Well, I don't think that with each bit of this new information, we're supposed to take in new information and kind of look at the facts and see, if our theory is standing up, right?
Right.
Imagine if you had worked somewhere for 20 years and everybody around you was pretty much doing all this kind of stuff that we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about SAing women,
Yeah.
this is a it feels like we say it, but then whenever it comes down to actually this might be true, people kind of back off of it and get scared.
You
It's
mean
like, oh,
the part beyond Ben Fields, which he
mm,
admitted to, more of the stuff like Sabrina Adkins alleged that she saw a video of Judge Mullins having sex in
yeah,
his chamber, and it sound I like he didn't know or she didn't know who the woman was in her proffer, but it sounded like it was the same kind of thing, right? Like it was an inmate in the Letcher County Jail or something.
yeah, and I've kind of come into a lot of stuff recently from people in the community that are kind of in the know. Um, People are scared. They don't want to come forward. They don't want their names associated with stuff,
Yeah.
because, and a lot of them, even the older ones, their children, they're scared for their children. They're afraid if they say something or it gets back to them, their kids are going to suffer the consequences at school, say, as an athlete or, whatever. So it's kind of a touchy
Well,
subject.
and that's understandable. I mean, the people that are in this alleged uh, group would also be doing other things out in the community. They'd be coaching ball. They'd be, I don't know, at the school board. They'd be doing all the stuff that is done in the community. I run into that frequently. I did this, not connected to this case, but in my day job, I was investigating allegations of an inappropriate relationship between a female teacher and several male students, and so many people had information that they were willing to give, but would never do anything on the record, ever,
Mhm.
because little town, their kids all go to the school. Some of them work for the school district,
Yeah.
or they have somebody that they know or love who works at the school district. It's and I think that's the way these kinds of things just continue to be perpetrated because
Yeah.
everybody's afraid.
Yeah. It's the way that everything keeps getting pushed under the rug, swept under the rug, you know.
But, I mean, well, and we're talking about Mickey Stines. He had, apparently, according to his lawyer, the belief that his wife and daughter were in danger.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, that, to me, that would indicate that that could have always been the case. And so if he knew something, he, even as sheriff, may have kept that under his hat for years.
Yeah, and that's my point. So if he was on the sidelines over 20 years and wanted to be one of the guys, wanted to be accepted, I
Yeah.
kind of get the feeling that Mickey was the oddball out. I've said that before. Mickey wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't, he didn't have a whole bunch of degrees,
Mm.
and training. He only had on the job training pretty much, as he,
Yeah, he didn't even go to the academy, right?
mm-mm, no. So he was trained by people above him. And depending on how they ran their departments and stuff, we kind of see um, certain issues and problems have just been kicked on down the road, to the next administration, which was Mickey's. So if he, in his own mind, he knows what he knows, nobody else knows what he knows. And if that was me, I could see myself not sleeping. I could see myself, praying and talking to myself and trying to figure out what my options are, kind of seeing all this stuff unfolding in front of him. And, you know, it just, I don't know, maybe he weighed his options and he saw that he didn't have any other choice. I mean, maybe. We don't know.
As far as that moment in the judge's chambers where he pulled his weapon, is that what you mean? Like
Well,
that's where he
yeah.
thought he was, or some other way? What do you mean?
Well, I've heard that he got a phone call from somebody and he took it as a threat. Whatever was said on that phone call, he felt like was a threat. Um, but, I don't know that for sure or not. But you think so? Do we want to talk about who I spotted on the video?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Set it up for us, though. Set it up.
Okay. So, Court TV received some video from that day, and it shows across the hall from the judge's chambers that smoking room that we keep talking about. And so you see Mickey in the judge's chambers with the preacher sitting in the windowsill and the judge or the circuit court clerk, and then the other rehab fella. All those people are in the judge's chambers. And then right directly across the hall, you see Mickey walk out that door. He walks straight across the hallway and into that smoking room to get to the other door that's on the other side of the wall of the room. But in that smoking room, there were several people sitting around a table, much like in the judge's chambers. So you have the Commonwealth attorney, which
Hmm.
is the brother in law of the judge, sitting there with his feet up on the desk, all
Wait, wait,
laid
wait.
back.
The Commonwealth attorney is Judge Mullins' brother-in-law.
Yes, they married sisters.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And so he's sitting in there with his feet up on the desk. And then there's another woman there, another deputy, an older gentleman, Jason Eccles, who is a deputy that's mentioned. Bless
Oh
you.
my goodness, excuse me.
Jason Eccles is one of the deputies that is mentioned so many times in the depositions
Right.
from all the childish, dirty talk.
Yeah.
And then there was another woman sitting there with her hair up, and I didn't recognize her. I thought she was just a clerk from the courthouse. I didn't even ask anybody who is that because I just didn't dawn on me. But that was Ben's wife.
Ben Field's wife. So she is the one who worked as a jailer in the jail at the same time Ben was the ankle monitor guy, right? I'm
Yes,
actually confused about the timeline when he was imprisoned in the jail or incarcerated in the jail. Was she still working as a jailer down there?
I don't know if she was actually working down there whenever he was serving his time, but former employees that were working there at that time said that anytime she wanted to come in, she could. She could go in his cell with him and hang out as much as she wanted. And I think she was already upstairs at that
Okay,
time.
so okay, but then she got a promotion and was working upstairs.
They actually met at working at the jail together. She was married to someone else and worked at the jail. And then Ben was working at the jail. And that explains why they were hooking up in the bathroom upstairs
Upstairs,
after
yeah.
work.
Yes. Okay. All right. So what do you think she was doing in there?
That's where she worked. So we know, and this is kind of one of those examples of what I was saying earlier. Like we knew that Ben's wife worked upstairs in the courthouse in the juvenile system somehow. Um, but actually seeing it on video, how closely they all were working together on a daily basis and have been on a daily basis, like ever since that happened. Could you
Yeah.
imagine how uncomfortable that environment would have been for Mickey going through all of this stuff?
Well, and
I,
how uncomfortable it would be. Like, okay, you went there, and I want to go there, but the first thing I was thinking is like, my husband was convicted. He pleaded guilty to and convicted of SAing women in the jail, and I'm just hanging out with the judge out here, man. Like that should be uncomfortable for everyone, but it appears it wasn't uncomfortable for anyone. But
absolutely.
Mickey is now being sued over this. It
Yeah.
yeah, dang it. This is the most incestuous little town.
You
Like
can't make it
it really is.
up.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And I think it goes a lot deeper than what anybody wants to, anybody that's not from here wants to believe. You know, it's kind of hard to believe that this kind of thing could happen in at this time, day and time, you
So
know?
in my county up here in Pennsylvania, and I am in rural Podunk, like by choice, I love it, but I'm in rural Podunk, Pennsylvania. And, you know, one of our public defenders, his, let me just put it this way, our district attorney, who prosecutes crimes, his brother is a public defender in the same office. And like we see that kind of thing pretty frequently. Um, you know, if they work in the pathonetary's office or the administration, or the court clerk's office or whatever, and they have three sisters that are in the building, or their first cousin or their mom or whatever. So I can see the nepotism in a little town mostly because that's the kind of career path that they're drawn to, I guess. And so if you're in a little place and you both are lawyers and one of you wants to be a defense lawyer and one of you wants to be a prosecutor, I guess you'll find yourself in the court together. But I, this seems like on another level in Letcher County, probably because of the spotlight that is shining on him because of the freaking, you know, uh, conviction of this guy who was abusing women in the jail. I it is an incestuous little courthouse.
I honestly, personally, myself, and this is just my opinion, but I think that if they really looked at all of this, they would see that I think money is at the root of it all. And I think that the abuse stuff, the women is just a bonus. You know, there's a whole lot of money that is coming into this area for substance abuse and these abuse programs. And you've got nonprofit groups that have raised up and for profit groups.
Yeah.
And these are right here in this area with our doctors down there in Whitesburg who are putting all this stuff together. And, you know, those grants, this money is in the multi millions of dollars for these programs, you
Yeah.
know?
And so let's talk through this a little bit and let me see if I'm right on this. Um so Ned Pillersdorf was on my show a couple of months ago and he talked about how most of the most of the crime that's happening in these little communities is drug related. It's either uh, possession or distribution, or all of the crimes that go along with it, burglaries and robberies and retail thefts and stuff like that. All those that go along with drug addiction. So the state goes, we have a problem here. We're going to give $100 million in Appalachia fund for drug rehab, let's say, for rehab. And then so that makes a little industry pop up of rehab centers, right?
Yep.
Most of them are going to be for profit, and then they all have to be certified for some, by the state or whatever to make sure that they are, doing what they're supposed to be doing. But then not necessarily the judges, but the court, it's usually administrators are the ones in probation and parole or whatever that if a judge says, I'm going to require you to do an inpatient program or I'm going to require you to do an outpatient program, probation and parole, some administrator is the one that is like funneling people to throughout this industry. It, have I, am I reading what you're saying correctly?
Well, the way that they set it up was the state actually came to Mullins and said, we want to put forth this program, but we want you to do the pilot. We want you to run the pilot program.
Okay.
That was the Senate Bill 90, is what it was called. And so Mullins was the first one. He was the golden boy.
And we've
He
seen like advertisements and stuff like, yeah, videos that he made.
Mhm.
Okay.
And he was the golden boy. You know, he started it in his court, and what he did was he ended up getting two people: the preacher, Michael Clark, because he
Mm-hmm.
was working for ARC, which is the big rehab place that's being investigated by the FBI. So they had him, or Mullins had him, and he had another lady, and they started what he did. He basically put Michael on one side of the room and put her on the other. And when a defendant would come in front of him, he'd say, okay, you've got two options. That one over there is outpatient treatment and transportation. And That one over there is in-house treatment, in-house 30-day or
Yeah.
longer, rehab. And depending on what the case was, of course. And then that's basically how it started. So he had his bases covered, on both ends
So
of
it
the
was Mullins that
spectrum.
was making the choice as to where he was sending
Well,
defendants.
I well then COVID happened. And
Okay.
when COVID happened, it kind of shut everything down. It shut all the courthouses down pretty much. And
Yeah.
um, the lady ended up leaving for another job or something, but she left. And so all it left was Michael Clark, the preacher.
Okay.
And so all of those people went from having, you know, two different options there into, and I don't know how many options there were, at that time, but whenever she left, it only left Michael who worked for ARC, right?
Okay.
So, but they've opened it up. They've got other. I'm sure he probably used other facilities too, but most of it went to ARC.
So what do you think? I mean, so we've got an industry of drug treatment going on here. We've got Kevin Mullins at the center of it. Got a whole bunch of money coming in from the state. Uh, Are you just, is your theory here that it was just, it created an environment where abuse could occur? Or do you
Yeah,
think that abuse was occurring anyway and maybe this just gave it a shot of steroids? What do you think?
yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because the those of us who live here pretty much know that corruption didn't just start with Mickey Stines. When he became sheriff or when Judge Mullins became judge. Um, we've heard the stories about Whitesburg Courthouse for many decades.
Hmm.
And I think the players, the game stays the same, and the players are the only thing that changes, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we can bring this back around to motive, I mean, if you believe what Mr. Bartley is saying, uh, his client was, I don't know. Well, this is horrible. This is Gavin's opinion. I'm not putting any words into Mr. Bartley's mouth, but like his client is pure as the wind-driven snow. He was in a bad situation. He knew some information. They were afraid that information was going to get out, and therefore he believed that his wife and daughter were in danger. Uh, but to me, it feels like Mickey couldn't have just been on the sidelines on this. It just doesn't feel like somebody can be on the sidelines. It
Yeah.
feels like you have to have at least your toe in the water, doesn't it?
Right. Well, over that over that many years, I'm sure there's something that maybe people were holding over his head. Maybe he was just afraid because he knows what he's done or what he hasn't. He's the only one that knows in his mind what he knows on other people.
Yeah.
And he knows what they know about him.
But I wonder what proof is out there. Like, I was watching an interview with Mr. Bartley, and I think it was Anjanette Levy at Long Crime asked him about the video that Sabrina Atkins talked about in the proffer. And has he seen the video? Does he know if the video exists? And kid you not, Elizabeth, he got like the most sheepish, boyish grin, like trying, like you could play poker with this guy and win all day long. The guy has no poker face because he was like, it was like one of those things. And then he answers, I don't want to disparage the memory of the judge. Right? And I was like, oh, he's seen the video. Right? That's what I thought. Like that video does exist and people have seen it. So, what other evidence is there out there on this group of people?
Well, now I don't know of any that have surfaced of the judge. But now I've seen one with my own eyes of someone else that's in that circle.
Yeah.
And so I know they exist.
You were talking about the video that we shall not name and we shall not describe, but that you shared with me, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yes. Yes. We know that video exists.
And and you think,
Yeah.
so think about this. And it's just my opinion, it's just my kind of observations and experience. Birds of a feather flock together,
Yeah.
sometimes. And so each person that was around him is probably going to have their own self serving reasons why they don't want him to say anything at his deposition, right? So
Yes.
if he's got somebody whispering in this ear, and then he's got somebody else saying something else to him, he's got somebody else saying something else to him,
Yeah.
I could see how he could very easily be, overcome with just, I don't even know what to
Yeah.
say.
Panic, paranoia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the, I guess I'm going to keep coming back to what Sabrina Atkins said in her proffer, knowing, of course, that it's hearsay, right?
Mhm. It's
Who
all
who
speculation at
who
this
knows if
point.
it's true, other than the indication from Mr. Bartley where it feels like it's true. But um, that kind of that kind of kink, I guess I would describe it as, of videoing yourself in the act of sexual congress, right? That is not a kink that just like comes out of nowhere. So if there is
Right.
one video, there's like 100 videos. There might be 1,000 videos.
Absolutely.
And I would imagine that if there's like this group of a little old boys club, yeah, no pun intended, little boy. But anyway, uh, that once one of them started it, others would join in on the action, right? I just feel like Mickey Stines, one, knows of the existence of all that stuff because he knows is aware of what's going on in the courthouse, or he knows the existence of that stuff because he himself is an actor in one of these videos. That's what
Well,
it feels like to me.
think about what we saw in their Facebook communications.
Yeah.
From the beginning to the end, every bit of it's vulgar, it's childish, it's real immature, and that seems to be a theme throughout every bit of their communications. Like,
Yeah.
it was to an extreme, you know. Like, I can see you called it locker room banter or something like that.
Yeah.
I can see, I've got boys, I've
Yeah.
got two boy teenagers. And as soon as they get in my truck with all their friends, everybody's a tooting and a laughing and a
Yeah.
giggling, and carrying on. I understand that.
Yeah.
But when you're running a sheriff's department,
Well,
it
and
just
your
seems like
characterization of it is accurate. Just like I don't know how many of those documents you've shared on your channel. Have you shown people some of this stuff?
not of that. We looked at some of it at the earlier stuff that was released, but
Yeah.
they didn't really have anything in that earlier stuff. Most of that was redacted, if you
That is
remember.
correct. Yeah.
So we didn't see the turtle picture. We just
Yeah.
saw the writing about it. But with these that have just been dropped recently, we get to see that stuff now. It's not redacted.
Yeah,
And
just so everybody knows, like this is not teenage boy locker room talk. This is explicit and vulgar, like you said, to the extreme. It is an indication of the kind of mindset that
yep,
sheriff's department had.
absolutely. And every single person that was in that chat.
So it seems like, well, and one of the people that was obviously Sheriff Stines was in that chat, but also his deputy Ben Fields. And Ben has been convicted of, essaying women, right? It's like
Hmm.
he was
And the other
working.
and the other one was Jason Eccles, who still works down
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Who is working as the sheriff these days? Has there been an election yet?
Well, so one of the other things that I recently found out through several sources was apparently Mullins had a meeting with, allegedly, had a meeting with our judge executive before Mickey ever gave his deposition.
What
I
is a
don't know.
judge executive?
Well, that is an elected position. It's a county, so they are, it's not a judge. It's not like a criminal judge.
Okay.
What they are responsible for is the county's money, the county's
Okay.
financing,
Gotcha.
and they are kind of the head of the fiscal court. And the fiscal court is made up of several magistrates. They call them magistrates,
Yeah.
and there's different districts inside the county, so you have a representative of each one of those districts that's elected,
Mm-hmm.
and then once a month they have a meeting with with all of them,
Okay.
and they just have, and they're the ones that vote on how the money is spent, and we looked at the audits. I don't think you looked
Mm-mm.
at our audits. So
Mm-mm.
we went over our county's audits from the
Okay.
state, and $2 million in miscellaneous with no description of where, what it was for. Or
Oh yeah.
you've got, when we had all that flooding and all those donations and the federal money, FEMA, all that stuff. Where did that money go? Well, apparently, from what I understand, and unless I misunderstood, um, it looks like they hired a company from away from here because they offered certain services that they couldn't get here. And after it was all over with, there really wasn't much documentation to show, like receipts
What
and
was the company hired for? What was the service?
to come in and do like disaster relief and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, so they're just shelling out money. That yeah.
And, not the judge executive now, but the one prior, Jim Ward. He he finally came out before he left office several years ago, and he declined. He said, I am not giving the sheriff's department no more money. It was reported in a news article that they had given the sheriff's department over $2.7 million to replace money that was missing or whatever. See, the sheriff's department is self-funded. So every time somebody new takes over or whatever, or maybe it's every year, it starts at like zero or something. And then they're responsible through their taxes, through the property taxes and other forms, which
Okay.
I'm not aware of. But it's their responsibility to balance their money and budget their office,
Yeah.
and kind of keep track of all that stuff and do it proper. And according to these audits that I've seen, every single year, whenever they come in and do the audits, the only thing that the audit is limited to look at is if they have proper, like if they have separation of duties when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to the money and stuff like that. And the same problems and issues have been isolated out each year on these audits. But the following year, nothing's ever done about it. Nothing gets any better. They just respond to the problem and say, "Well, we're working on it."
We're gonna address that. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
every year it's the same thing. It's still coming up as, well, you can't, there's no system in place for waste, fraud, and abuse to even be identified or even caught, let alone some kind of a solution be put in place to fix it and stop it.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
it just keeps the bleeding,
Yeah.
you know.
So this is not just like a group of powerful people having fun with kinky sex. These are people that are abusing uh, taxpayer dollars, and they're, I mean,
Well,
it's
and I honestly believe that a lot of it is just people that aren't educated
yeah,
on,
incompetence. Yeah.
yeah, and like if you, one of the guys who went to the meeting, the fiscal court meeting, he said, educate yourself. I started taking classes online about erosion, about, flooding and things that I could do to my property to stop it from happening and this and that. He said, you all need to go educate yourself. And I got to thinking about that. And I was like, yeah, if I got elected to a position and I was
Sure.
getting a salary of like 25,000 a year and I didn't really know much about these problems, that's something that you think that you would do is take a class. I mean, or something online. There's so much information with the internet now. There's no excuse not to.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so before we go over to some questions that are coming in from the old fish tank, what do I call it? The what do I call it? The fish bowl. There we go. Um, let's talk about the depositions that have come out over the last couple of days. So you have been reading the one of the assistant, right, in the sheriff's office. What have you learned from that one?
She didn't know nothing. She didn't see nothing.
I ain't done nothing. I ain't seen nothing. I ain't heard nothing. That's funny. So
Well,
yeah, this is they yeah, they're circled up apparently. Huh? It's not surprising that nobody knows what was happening or why it was happening. That's hilarious. Okay.
she said she had never even heard a rumor.
Like what? Yeah, and tell me, like on your BS meter, how true does that ring?
I I don't know.
I
I'd
mean,
hate to even say, but I just don't see how. If you worked there 25 years,
yeah.
and you would think that you'd heard a rumor. As
Well,
much gossip and backstabbing and stuff goes on down there at that courthouse.
and I thought you had said like there have been rumors about this kind of thing just in the community, right? So to say I've never heard a rumor, well, you work there, you live close by, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
And
that
one more thing I'll point out that, and I can't help it. This is just what it appears like to me. When we read Mickey's deposition,
hmm
I realized that he was being represented by Daniel Dotson,
hmm
which is the defense attorney here in Whitesburg, and he's right in there, honey. He's right in there.
Oh,
Um,
he okay. I see what you're
and
saying.
he wasn't at any of the other depositions. He wasn't present. So
Oh,
Mickey had an attorney that was representing him in his official capacity as sheriff, that I
yes.
guess was provided through the sheriff's people.
Yeah.
And then he he was only sued, I'm pretty sure, in Ned's lawsuit in his official capacity.
I think you're
I don't
right. Yeah.
I don't think Ned sued him in his personal capacity. But so Daniel Dotson did not make an appearance on any of those other depositions for anybody else, but he showed up in person with Mickey that day. And throughout Mickey's deposition, you can tell he's real anxious. You can tell he's scared, I'd say, because he keeps asking them to repeat the
hmm
questions.
He keeps
And
asking to step out with his attorney. Yeah.
mhm. And you know, from what we've heard from his lawyer, he was afraid that he either had said the wrong thing or he was getting ready to say the wrong, or that he might say the wrong
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And so if he was there, I can see every question they asked him. He's going through his mind because he doesn't want to lie under oath, right? If you
Sure.
lie under oath and as serious as what this is,
And you're caught. Yeah.
right? And if he tells the truth, who's that going to hurt? Who's going to be mad at him? What's going to happen? Um, but so then at one point in the deposition, the lawyer asks him about the journalist that calls him and him finding out about this lawsuit. And then he says about our other judge and one of the drug court workers came over to his office and said apologized to him and said we're sorry we didn't tell you,
Yeah.
that
For not
they had
giving him a
heard
heads up.
yeah, they had heard it already, but they hadn't told him. Well, right after that, it seems like to me that him and Daniel take a break and then they come back, and every question after that, Mickey says, I don't recall. I don't
I don't.
recall.
Yeah.
I don't recall. And I mean,
A great deposition answer.
I'm not accusing him of nothing at all. I just wonder, was that intimidating him? Did that
Yeah.
intimidate Mickey? Was he sent there as a babysitter to make sure?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, but it's a question that I have.
Yeah. That's a good point. All right. Let's see some bros met 8. I wonder where the live feed cameras were being watched or monitored. I think it's talking about this camera. Do you know
The
who, if that,
AOC,
say that again?
the AOC, that's the administration of the courts.
In the building, or is this a statewide thing?
It's a state department, and I guess all courthouses, then are all the courtrooms and the judges.
Wow.
And I didn't know that it was a live feed, and I even forget where we learned that from, but in some piece of information that was brought out, it said that it was a live feed, which was very interesting. So it must have been a live feed back to the whoever
Yeah.
looks at them from the state.
Yeah. Okay, Marnie says Gavin Bartley also said that the preacher said something to Mickey that has something to do with the story. Does that ring a bell?
Well, what I don't know about what Bartley said. I don't know. Looking at that video, you see uh, Michael Clark say something while he's sitting.
Oh,
Not
and
that.
not the one previous. They're in that room.
When
Yeah.
Michael's sitting in the windowsill, it looks like Michael says something, and Mickey kind of like takes a step towards him or leans in towards him to respond to
Mm.
him. And then it kind of looked to me like the judge either kind of giggled or made some kind of a, you know.
We're going to try to get our hands on that raw video because so far we've just seen it broadcast from other outlets, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna try to get that. Okay. Cooler by the Lake asks Elizabeth, is the community continuing to stand behind Mickey? Does he appear to be losing support or gaining? I live in a small southern town, and this case is so interesting.
Um, well, at first, when it first happened, a lot a lot of people were more vocal about it, I guess. They were more vocal about the blind loyalty to him. Pretty much, they all knew him. They knew his character. I mean, that's the majority of the opinions that I've heard. They knew his character, and that if he did this, then he had a reason.
Yeah.
And you know,
Well, that's what Ned said originally too. That he thought that the defense was going to He called it a time to kill defense, right? It's
Mm.
just like there was another option here in my mind. It was time. It had to be done. We're going to do it. And it does seem like in the beginning that, I mean, even when I talked to you in the beginning, it was, hey, I've known this guy forever, right? He's a good guy.
Long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
every one of these people have done good in this community. Even the dirtiest dog, honey, has done good and has been good to some people. you
Hmm.
know, you know what I mean? They're not
Yeah.
all bad. Not everybody is bad.
Well,
And
that
these,
is the, I mean, that is the a commentary on the human beast, right? We all are complex combinations of good and bad. Uh,
yeah,
and that's like maybe the best camouflage is that you're in the community doing great things. I mean, nobody who is like Doctor Evil levels of evil are going around the community like driving their cars over lawns and like abusing animals in front of people, doing all bad things, right? They have to have some sort of camouflage, even if it's a subconscious camouflage, right? They don't understand what they're doing is bad. They still will be doing good things. It's interesting. Leanne says, "Does the judge's college roommate work in that circle?" I've forgotten who the college roommate is. What
he
that
don't
has to do with
work.
anything?
He don't work in that circle. He owns a music store and he sells outbuildings and propane gas.
Okay,
So he's a prominent businessman in the community,
but you don't
which,
think he's in that circle that what I've been calling a cartel of power in Letcher County.
well, he got out of it. He got out of any real sentence for well, he pled guilty to it, so it's not alleged, to abusing one child under the age of 12 and another child under the age of 16. And he ended up getting 5 years on house arrest and work release. I think he has to serve like 7 years of probation, but five of it will be house arrest and work release. But he works right across the street from a high school, you know, and,
Oh,
and that's where his business is.
wow.
And there's some really really questionable. When I start digging into the documentation and trying to find stuff on that case, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of fishy with
Okay.
that.
DC 28 seems like this person might be local. I'm looking at a couple of comments. It says this judge was absolutely horrible. I saw an interview today with retired Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, who said that half of the people that interface with a judge are going to not like him, and the other half are going to love him, right? But
Mhm.
it does feel like Judge Mullins. I mean, you described him as a golden boy a little bit earlier.
Mhm.
It does seem like his image in the community was pretty stellar.
Yeah. Well,
Unless you're on the receiving end of one of his judgments, I guess.
now I have a different perspective.
All right.
Okay. Um, how many of these people do we see? And it's all about this right here. It's all about patting each other on the back. It's about patting themselves on the back. Like all of these people have really big salaries, like they have an ulterior motive, and the only people that they put up on these big pedestals and tell their stories and this and that are their themselves,
Mm,
and stuff. Where's the stories of the people? Like very few. If you start digging through like their marketing stuff,
yeah.
very few. They're not telling many of these addict stories. The only ones that they can take credit for
Yeah.
are the ones that they are putting out there.
A nice success story. Yeah.
The only people that are benefiting from all that money, like you ask anybody in this community, have you benefited from this money? From the opioid settlement money? Have you benefited from any of this grant money or the donation money that was sent to this area? You're
Yeah.
not going to get many that are going to say yes.
Well, and I think it's also important to recognize that in communities like this, the people that we're talking about here, not necessarily the sheriff, but the district attorney or state's attorney, whatever you want to call it there, the so the prosecutor, the judges, these are the people that make the most money in the county, right? The In my county, our district attorney makes double what the next highest paid person makes in the county.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not really big on kind of class warfare that way, but it does create it does create a separation. There's a bifurcation of people who have and people who do not have. The haves and
Yeah.
have-nots, right? So, yeah, that's an interesting side of it.
And
Go
the
ahead.
question the question is, what will people do for money and what will they do to keep it?
Yeah, yeah, that's the age-old question about corruption for sure.
And power. It's not all about money.
That's true. Let's see. Has Elizabeth been to the courthouse since it's back open? Is there a different feel in the air down there? Have you been back to the courthouse?
Stay away.
Yeah, that you don't have happy memories there.
I've driven around it. And
That's
I think
funny.
I went in one time and they had put in a little metal detector station at the front
That
of
wasn't
the.
there before.
Mm-mm,
You
mm-mm.
know what's funny? How interesting are we as human beasts? A metal detector at the door would not have stopped this murder.
No.
He was the sheriff, and yet they're going to try to make it look like they're doing something. That is so funny. Oh, that is the way in our response to so many things in life. Okay, DC 28 asking what we think. What says? What do you and Elizabeth think was on the phones? The investigators took the phones for a reason. We're talking about Mickey and Judge Mullins' phones. Is that who we're talking about here?
I think they're also including the girl that was at the sheriff's department. And we figured out that it was the Christine Bowling. So she was the only other female that worked at the sheriff's department. And she was more of a clerk, I reckon. And she assisted Mickey and Lashana, the admin lady. And I found out that she actually came from the judge executive's office when
Mm.
the previous person had been there, um, the previous administration. And so she just went from, because whenever somebody new's elected, they have the option, they can either keep you or they can get rid of everybody and start over with their own
Right.
staff. And so she was out of the judge executive's office and they hired her over at the sheriff's department.
So, what do you think was on the phones?
Well, she's the one that turned her phone over to the KSP, to the state police, because apparently there was some communication between her and Mickey before he went in the judge's chambers and shot him.
All right. Well, that
But we
leads to
don't know
this.
what that, yeah, we don't know what it was though.
No idea. Okay. Uh, reckon why they haven't released the video leading up to the shooting. They released video from all around it, but nothing leading up to it. There's a little bit of video leading up to it. There's the meeting
Well,
with the preacher and the judge and everybody.
but apparently there's one more piece that is between everything we've seen so far and the shooting.
So
There's a
my
piece
thought
there.
on that though is that the state police seem to be taking this seriously. They seem to be doing
Mhm.
a good investigation. And this is one of those things that's I was talking to my wife about this just a couple nights ago. We were on a walk. We were talking about this, where how do I introduce this whole idea? Um, Oftentimes when I work with a lot of families, they will send me something has happened to a loved one. They have sued to get the police files. They have the police files. They want me to take a look at it and see what I find in it. So I do that pretty frequently. And most of the time, their questions to me are very leading. Didn't the police suck at this, Gavin? Didn't they do a terrible job, Gavin? Shouldn't they have done this, Gavin? And one of the hardest things is for me to go, if it is the case, which it often is, no, this is a great police investigation. This is a very good police investigation. The issue comes down to this one person. That is how that's usually what happens, is that there's one little thing that causes an investigation to go sideways. And so I honestly think that the incentive is there with the state police to do a good job in investigating this crime. The incentive is there at the state to prosecute it well. That it's gotten so much attention, they don't want to be looking like a bunch of Keystone cops out there. I think they're probably doing a good job. And so if there's a video that they haven't released, my guess is they're doing that for the integrity of the investigation.
Oh
That
yeah.
that's my experience, but I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, definitely. I believe that too. Um, I think that um, investigations here in this area aren't, they don't necessarily have a really great reputation, you know. One thing I'll point out is whenever Ben's investigation, or whenever Mickey found out about Ben, what he was being accused of, he reached out to the Kentucky State Police and asked them to come in and investigate his deputy because these accusations had come to his attention.
Right.
They declined the investigation. They said
Right.
no. They said we are too close to this. We can't investigate him. And so if they were too conflicted to investigate the essaying stuff of Ben, then how are they not too conflicted to investigate this case? That just doesn't make much sense to me.
So can I ask how is the Kentucky State Police organized? Do they have barracks like scattered throughout the Commonwealth?
They're posts. They call them.
Posts?
Yeah.
Okay. So when he asked the state police to investigate, was he asking the local post to do that?
Yep.
Okay. So and then the people who responded to the courthouse that day, they would have been the local state police, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the people who are actually investigating this, are they the local state police or are they investigators from a different post?
Well, I don't. That's a good question. I don't. It looks like it's the local ones because that's the lead detective that got up on the stand and
Well,
testified.
that would happen in the arraignment
Hmm.
because he was the one that responded, right? They were the ones that were on scene that day. I'm just trying to like extend a little grace, maybe play a little devil's advocate here. That like
Okay.
if I'm a state trooper, I don't know what they call state. Are they called troopers there?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm a state trooper and I am frequently doing criminal investigations and I'm doing it on domestics and I'm doing it on burglaries and I'm doing it on retail thefts at the Walmart, then my affidavits, my testimony will be in front of the judge all the time in that area, right? So my guess is that the police would be like the state police in the upper ranks of the state police would go, no, you may not investigate the murder of a judge that you have stood in front of 300 times. That's the way it feels like to me. But
Yeah.
but I don't know that. I mean, if they are the local guys from the state police investigating, I'd be really surprised.
Well, one of the things that did pick up on in Lashana Frazier's deposition was they asked her if she had ever been interviewed regarding Ben's case. They
Mm-hmm.
asked her if she'd ever been interviewed, um, or asked any questions or anything. She had never been talked to about any of it. And so it kind of makes you wonder, how good of an investigation was even done. And that was the Attorney General's office.
Yeah. Again, though, I mean, the, the plain devil's advocate. If I'm the investigator and I've got leads on who is involved, they're not just going to shotgun out and interview everybody around. They're going to be following leads, right? So that's another one of those things where I hear all the time, Gavin, they didn't even talk to so and so. Well, did you direct them to so and so, or what do you believe so and so has to do with it? So I don't know. I'm a little
Well, if there was a bigger staff at the sheriff's department, I could see that.
okay.
But you've only got like four people,
Okay,
you
yeah,
know.
that's fair. That's fair. Okay, Brosmit 8 again. I read somewhere that Judge Mullins was the godparent to Stein's daughter. Is there any truth to that?
I don't know. I don't know. One of the things that Mickey's lawyer said in his interview was that they didn't think Stines and Mullins. I don't remember his exact quote, but it was something to the effect of that they Mickey and the judge weren't as good of friends as what is being portrayed.
I see.
He I don't know if he said he'd be surprised or if he said the judge didn't, but he said something about the judge not voting for Mickey. That the judge might not have even voted for Mickey, or probably didn't, or didn't.
That's funny. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
so
it could be that they worked. I mean, yeah, we've all had coworkers that we got along with, but they
and fell
weren't.
out.
Yeah, yeah, or like didn't necessarily like, but we've been able to successfully work together. I've
Mm.
had a few of those coworkers where I'd shake my head privately, but we worked well together. That was fine. Yeah, so maybe it's not that they were friends. Maybe they were just colleagues.
And maybe too, they had somebody in Mickey that they could kind of, usually there's one that's kind of, like I said, the odd man out, the one
Yes.
that's kind of picked on,
Yes.
or maybe they are more disposable
Hmm.
than others.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
No, there's always that. There's always that. Man, such a this case. I try really hard not to speculate, but this case, all we really have is speculation. There are
Yeah.
things that kind of drip drop out, including the depositions and the exhibits and so forth. Some of the videos. Uh, oh my goodness, Mr. Bartley smiling when he was asked about if he had seen the video of Judge Mullins with the girl that Sabrina Adkins was talking, or told the investigator about, and I was like, oh my goodness, that guy. That's exactly what he looks like when he's got bullets in his hand. He's got pocket aces. That's what he looks like.
Well,
He's
one
seen
of
it.
the things that I think has really taken off is gambling. With the all these new apps and the way that technology has just really kind of taken off in the last 10 years. Now people can do stuff on their phones, and usually people will replace one thing with another. And so I was surprised. I'm not much of a gambler myself, so I was very surprised when I started finding out that we've got a whole lot of illegal gambling spots, joints here.
Oh, really? I was
And
wondering where you're going with that.
there's been many, like, I mean, it was in the depositions. Mickey even hosted a card game at his house on Sunday nights. Now,
Yeah.
not saying that they had big gambling, stuff going on at Mickey's house. That's not what these the illegal gambling spots are like in town and stuff. But they these power players are big card players. There's lots and lots and lots of personal accounts that people have given being at those parties, being at those private parties where a lot of crazy stuff supposedly
Yeah.
happens.
Huh. All right, here's another question. Avery asks, wrong button. Gavin's pushing wrong buttons here. I'm confused on why you guys can't give us the name of who is on video. Is it for safety? I'm not saying it because it is all Elizabeth.
Well, nobody's told me not to, but I don't know what, like, this is new territory for me.
Yeah.
You It's real new territory for me. I wouldn't want to um mess anything up. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
we definitely can't show that video. That
Mm-mm.
is, it is no. We would not jeopardize our channels by showing something like that, even if it were blurred. Um, yeah,
But it shows us that was what I was kind of getting to there a minute ago. We never go anywhere without this right here.
yeah,
We don't go nowhere without it.
yeah.
And I think that in the last 10 years, people have gotten so comfortable with it. Well, longer than 10 years, but I'm kind of looking at the evolution of how social media has kind of made it easier for pervy people to do stuff, you know?
Well, and that's why I've been wondering though. Like, Sabrina was talking about the VHS tape. Okay, so I get using a VHS tape; it's analog, but I mean, people evolve with their technology. If they were doing stuff in the judge's chambers with a giant old like Betamax at one point, eventually it would be on a phone, right? And you would think that that stuff would leak out by now.
I'm not convinced that that's really what she meant. If you look at that point of that interview, I just don't think she was really comfortable answering his questions. The tone of his voice and the way that he conducted that interview, it just made me feel like she was like, cause she kind of nervous giggled a couple times. She, I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly what she meant or not.
Okay, yeah, sure, it's possible that. Well, and my wife gets confused about different things all the time too. So it's like if you're not a technology driven kind of person, you
Hmm.
might describe something as something else. And then if you're super nervous about what it is that you're talking about, I mean, she was just outing a judge for
Yes.
doing a crime, right? So,
And that investigator didn't sound like he believed her to me.
I have a different take on that. And respectfully, I mean,
Yeah, that's okay.
the I listened to that whole thing and I had heard your commentary on it before I listened to it, and I I disagreed. I thought that the investigator was doing a fine investigation and that he was doing it. He was very analytical. Certainly wasn't very sympathetic. Uh, there was there couldn't have been empathy there, but there wasn't even sympathy. I don't think there was way more. He was way more sympathetic with Ben Fields than he was with Sabrina Atkins. But to me, it felt like that was his strategy. More, like he was purposefully choosing
Maybe.
to be that way.
Maybe. Yeah. Because I didn't.
That whole with Ben Fields, where he's like, "Man, it feels like you're on a heel and you can't even make it to the top," and he's like He's trying to get him to just open up, buddy. It'll make you feel better, kind of thing. And
I've done stuff like that too, man.
sure, man, I did it to my kids. Yeah. So yeah, that's funny. I've been there, man. I've been there. That's funny.
Well, I guess that's kind of to what me and you were talking about before we even came on here about not being a woman. I just believe that that interview would have went a different way if there had been a female interviewing her.
And I completely agree. Yeah, it would have. And maybe that's why I take the position I am. I'm seeing it a little bit from his side, and we do need to understand that there's like as men we're in these cases where we're talking about SA. The vast majority of victims are women. The vast majority of perpetrators are men. The understanding of that power imbalance doesn't really occur to us in the same way that it would a woman, and I can understand that on like a on a theoretical level, but I really don't have it. I don't really have a deep understanding of that the way somebody would on the receiving end of that abuse.
Well, could you imagine if a woman had interviewed Ben? How that interview would have went?
Oh yeah, I mean,
It would have went to completely different. So just kind of
100%.
flip that over, and you see what we got with Sabrina's.
Yeah, I think you raise a valid point there.
Yeah,
Um, and I wonder if that is the reason that like Mr. Pillersdorf's colleague, I can't remember her name right now, but
Bethany Baxter.
yes, Ms. Baxter. I imagine that she probably is one of the reasons why Sabrina Atkins and Jennifer Hill would open up to their lawyers the way that they did. I would imagine because as as much as Pillersdorf has been charming when I've talked to him, he's still a pretty rough around the edges dude, right?
And we see Pillersdorf's wife popping in this or in this case
Yeah.
several times. And so I think that's wonderful. Like that's surprised me, but I think that's been a good thing.
For
You
those same reasons, right?
hmm
And
Yeah.
she is like her reputation is one of a strong, super bright,
Powerhouse.
very yeah, powerhouse of a person. She's
Yeah.
amazing. So yeah, and I bet the plaintiffs in this case, when they are in the presence of her, probably feel like, hey, I've got a team behind me here. I've got power now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so
man.
too.
Well, this case, I'm sure we're gonna get more. I'm sure. Hopefully, you'll be back. We'll be talking again.
Yeah.
You've been like crazy hitting home runs lately. I've seen you on. What have you been on Court TV 4 or 5 times at this point?
Yeah, a few times. But
Yeah.
you're my favorite,
Well, and
Gavin.
your channel is growing at a crazy rapid pace. You're doing really good work down there, and I'm enjoying watching it. And I appreciate you coming on the channel. It's amazing.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so stick around for just a second. I just a quick little outro for everybody, guys. Tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. I am actually. Let me bring this up for you on the channel. We are going to have. Where's my little button? Uh, Here we go. I'm going to be joined tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. by the parents of Aubrey Wu. So Jade and John are going to be joining me. We talked on the phone today. We talked a lot about the case. This is a case that makes people uncomfortable on many levels, but I think it's a very important case. We've got a missing 14-year-old girl who has a troubled past, a past riddled with abuse, and we've got parents that are worried about her that are trying really hard to bring her home. So please join me tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern for that conversation with them. And hopefully we're not only going to help bring Aubrey Wu home, but we are going to learn how to look for the signs in the lives of teenagers and children and grandchildren in our lives to hopefully avoid this in our lives. And it's wonderful that Aubrey's parents are going to come and talk to us about that. So that'll be tomorrow, 7:30 Eastern. Please join us over on Facebook in the Fish Tank. If that is your deal, just go to Facebook and search the Fish Tank or search Gavin Fish. You'll find us with that. I bid you adieu. Thank you very much for being here, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.